Welcome to the Explainer. Right now, India's energy sector is looking at a massive shakeup. We're talking about its two biggest government lenders, Power Finance Corporation and REC Limited, becoming one. So we're going to break down what this merger of power players really means, why it's all happening right now, and how it could totally reshape the future of energy in India.
Now, this whole merger thing might seem like it came out of nowhere, but honestly, this idea has been simmering on the back burner for years. So why the sudden rush? Well, a recent government announcement basically turned up the heat, putting this deal front and center. The real question is, what changed?
To really get what's happening today, you gotta rewind back to 2019. That's when PFC made its first big move, buying up a controlling stake in REC. A full-on merger was talked about back then, but the whole plan just kind of stalled. Fast forward to now, and the union budget for fiscal year 2026-27 has officially brought the plan back to life, putting this integration firmly back in motion.
Okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the deal itself, let's get a really clear picture of the two giants at the heart of this. So who exactly are PFC and REC?
So in the simplest terms, think of them as two huge government-owned banks for the power industry. PFC, it has a pretty broad mission to fund power projects all across India. REC, on the other hand, started out with a laser focus on bringing electricity to rural areas. But it's grown way beyond that to finance all sorts of power and infrastructure projects. So what you have are two giants with a very, very similar mission, bankrolling India's energy future.
All right, so this brings us right back to that key question. After all these years on hold, what was the catalyst? Why is this merger finally happening now?
You know, the trigger was just a single line in the union budget from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. She mentioned restructuring key public finance institutions. Now that might sound like boring jargon, but it was a huge signal of a new government strategy to consolidate its financial powerhouses, with PFC and REC right at the top of that list.
And it's so important to understand, this is way more than just a corporate reshuffle. It's a strategic move with massive national ambitions. The real goal here is to create one financial superpower that can work more efficiently, lend money on a much bigger scale, and ultimately fund India's huge push towards renewable energy and brand new infrastructure. Okay, so let's shift gears and look at how this consolidation is actually going to change things on the ground. What does creating one mega lender truly mean in practice?
To really get the impact, you have to remember the groundwork that was laid way back in 2019. PFC already owns most of REC, which makes it the parent company. So this isn't a merger of two rivals, it's the formal integration of a subsidiary into its parent, and you know that changes the whole dynamic.
That controlling stake, 52.63%, was the critical first move that set all of this in motion.
And that stake, it did not come cheap. PFC paid a jaw-dropping 14,500 crore rupees for it. I mean, that figure just highlights the sheer scale we're talking about and the immense value locked up in these two institutions before they even officially merge.
This slide here perfectly illustrates the goal. Right now, you've got two related but totally separate lenders. The whole point of the merger is to combine them into one streamlined institution. Think of it like taking two successful but overlapping teams at a company and merging them to create a single, more efficient, and way more powerful super unit.
Now, for any investors watching, the big question is obviously, what happens to my shares? Well, the current thinking is what's called a share swap, where REC shares get exchanged for PFC shares. The early market buzz is a ratio of about 8 PFC shares for every 9 REC shares you hold. But, and this is a really big but, this is just an estimate for now. The final numbers will only get locked in after a formal valuation is done.
So what happens now? Well, while the boards of both companies have basically given it an in-principle thumbs up, this deal is still a long way from being finalized. There are actually quite a few hurdles left to clear.
Getting this merger over the finish line is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. As you can see here, there's this complex, multi-stage approval process. It all starts with drafting the official plan, but then it has to clear major hurdles with financial regulators, get voted on by the shareholders of both companies, and then finally get a legal green light from the courts. Each step has its own set of complexities, so this whole thing is going to take some time.
Now, amid all this change, there's one point that officials have made crystal clear. This is a consolidation, not privatization. The new, bigger entity will stay firmly under government ownership.
So, what's the bottom line here? This merger creates a financial juggernaut. one that's designed to have the scale and the muscle to fund India's future. But it leaves us with one massive lingering question. As India races to meet its incredibly ambitious green energy targets, will this new power giant actually be powerful enough to finance that transition? Well, that remains to be seen.